Have you ever stumbled across the neutral profile in Lightroom and wondered, is this really the most neutral that a photo can get? Well, let me tell you something, it's not. Lightroom is sort of deceiving you there. As an example, look at this photo. This has contrast applied to it. This is the Adobe standard profile. The next one is the Adobe neutral profile, and then the one after is the one that is fully linear and has nothing applied to it. Now you might think, why would I want to do this? Well, you'll see why. My name's Zesis, but you can call me Zach, and I will be showing you how to create a custom developed profile that pretty much gives you full flexibility over contrast in your photos. It's really helpful. I've also just had a lot of fun learning about it, although it's also sort of driven me nuts in the same way that many photography concepts do, because there's just a lack of information available for them, and oftentimes people just misunderstand things. But that's a whole thing for another day. A camera raw file pretty much just contains raw sensor data from your camera when you captured a photo. And that is incredibly useful because it will contain more information than something that like a compressed JPEG would hold, but it also means that it can't just be viewed instantly. There needs to be some level of processing so that your computer knows, okay, this is how we interpret this data to make it into viewable pixels. That's where the role of developed profiles lies. I'm using a Sony a7 III, which means that all the camera standard profiles are specifically made for my a7 III. If I were to apply them to, say, a Canon or a Nikon camera, it would not really work. With all these profiles, you'll notice that there are differences in the way that they display the final image. They might have more or less contrast and the colors might look different. Now, what I'm going to be showing you is how to take one of these and actually customize it so that it works for you. And in this video, specifically, I'm going to be focusing on how to make it just a completely linear response, which means zero contrast. Zilch, nada. I want to quickly mention that this video has no sponsor, but if you like it, please, like the video, subscribe, enable notifications, all that good stuff. Additionally, I have my own prints and presets available in my online store. You can find the link in the description. Any purchase you make there supports me as a creator and also supports you because you either get a sick print or a sick preset out of it. So without further ado, let's actually get into the process behind it all. Now, the first thing you'll want to do is install DNG Profile Editor. You can find this at the link I've put in the description. This is what the page looks like at the time of recording. Pretty much you just need to scroll down, go ahead to DNG Profile Editor, and if you're using Mac, you download for Mac, or Windows, download for Windows. Let that download. Before opening it and trying to edit a profile, there is one thing that you have to do, which is the next step. Head into Lightroom and pull up a raw file that was taken with the camera model that you'd like to create a custom profile for. It doesn't need to be a good photo, it doesn't need to be anything special, it just needs to be a photo taken on the same camera that you plan on making a profile for, and it has to be a raw file. What you're going to want to do is go into the develop module and select the profile browser. From here, choose a profile that you'd like to be your base. Now, as I said, in this method, we're going to be getting rid of any pre-applied contrast, so don't focus as much on what contrast you get out of any of these profiles, but rather the colors. And if you do like the colors of a certain profile more than others, if that's the one that you've already been using, for example, then select that one. I'm going to use Adobe Standard in this example. Go ahead, press close, and bring up the export panel so you can export it as a DNG. It's really simple. You just go File, Export, and from there, scroll down, set the image format to be DNG. In terms of compatibility, it should be fine to set it at 14.0 and later. JPEG preview, you should be able to set to none. Don't worry about fast load data. Don't use lossy compression, and select embed original raw file. I don't know whether it will work or not without these settings, but this is just what's worked for me. Go ahead and export that to somewhere that you're familiar with, and we'll move on to the next step. Next, you want to open DNG Profile Editor. It'll look pretty weird if you're using an M1 or M2 Mac. I think it's something to do with the translation layer, but even though it looks strange, it still works. What you want to do is go to File, open DNG image, and open the DNG that you just saved before from Lightroom. You'll see it open up this new window that's got the preview of the DNG image. Go ahead into Tone Curve, where you can see it's got Base Tone Curve, Base Profile. If we set it to be linear, you'll see the photo, the actual preview has changed a bit. does look a lot flatter all of a sudden is let's show the base tone curve of this profile. Now, since we've set it to linear, right? Linear means y equals x. You'd expect a diagonal line, which is exactly what that linear response does. If we set it to base profile, however, take note of this tone curve. That is the default contrast that is applied when you're using the Adobe standard profile. But we don't want that. We don't want extra contrast being applied. Not good if you actually want to be fine-tuning and get a proper understanding of how images are being processed. So to fix this, set it to linear. That's all you have to do. From here, it's pretty simple. You just set the profile name to something that you'd like. So Adobe Neutral for Real. You go to File, Export, and it will have whatever camera that you've got. Profile, save as, and you can rename it if you want to, but that's not actually going to change the way it displays in Adobe Lightroom. One thing to quickly take note of is the where. It's set to camera profiles, where if you actually take a look, it's under, well, on Mac, it's under Application Support, Adobe Camera Raw, Camera Profiles. That means that you don't actually need to change this. You don't need to change the location of this. If you save it here, then it will automatically come up in Lightroom when you open Lightroom. Anyways, you just want to save that there. I'm gonna go ahead, save it. Sweet, was exported successfully. That's all we need to do here. The final step is to launch Lightroom again so that it can actually open, load up those develop profiles and head on in. Let's go back to the same photo. We'll go to the profiles and you'll see that I've got my Adobe Neutral for Real profile. If it is a profile that you want to use more frequently, then you can actually just add it to your favorites here, which means that it will actually come up in this drop down, which is really handy if you're using custom profiles. So let's select it and there we go. So what we've got here is a fully flat, zero contrast image. There's nothing going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Before I wrap this video up, I'll just show you how easy it is to actually use a linear response curve to edit. It's not as daunting as it might otherwise seem. The first thing I do is I just go straight to the tone curve and I say, you know what? We need to obviously give this photo some contrast back. And I tend to start off by mirroring, or at least somewhat closely approximating what the tone curve that you saw, the base profile curve is. So already you can see that we've added a lot of contrast back into the image. Starts to look a lot more similar to the Adobe standard. Let's go to the history real quick. And yeah, so you can see it's a bit brighter, so it doesn't really matter. Again, it's up to me. I can now make all the decisions I want with it. What better way to have full flexibility over your tones than, well, by having full control. I genuinely would really recommend you trying it out, even if it is just to experiment. I really do believe it helps provide a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes, and because of that, you might actually start to feel a bit more comfortable with what's going on in Lightroom as a result. Anyways, that's pretty much the entirety of this video. Linear profiles, getting a bit more control over the way that you do things in Lightroom, and also the connection between understanding how things work and how important that is then to achieve your desired outcomes. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe for more, leave a comment if this is something that you've done before or you've thought about doing before. If you have any questions, suggestions, just comments in general, leave them down there. And prints and presets, as I said, available in the store, link in description. Enjoy the rest of your day or night. Again, I'm gonna keep saying this, but if you're watching this in the AM and you don't actually have to be up at the AM, sleep. It's good for you. It's ironic because I'm recording this at 1:15 AM, but I'll leave you to it. See ya.